This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin FREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol, live. It's a big night. It is possible in the next few hours that we will know whether Republicans or Democrats control the Senate. The people have taken to the streets in Kenosha, Wisconsin, because of the decision to not indict the police officer that shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times. Washington, D.C. is preparing for quite possibly the largest COPE rally yet. I'm looking at a live stream right here. Plus, we've got election results coming in from the Georgia Senate runoff. Here you can see my Georgia Election Central. So far, with about 50% of the precincts reporting, both Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock are up. Now, I had originally predicted after the election, I figured that Warnock would win, Ossoff would lose. Because one of the things that we saw in the general election was that people were splitting the ticket. They were voting against Trump, but then deciding that they wanted to split government. One of my friends, his grandmother in Kentucky, told him about how she had to vote against Trump, but that means that she had to vote for McConnell. Because there's something about this older mindset that they feel a deadlocked government is best. So my original prediction was that they would split the races in Georgia. After seeing how everything has played out, with the COPE rallies, the Republicans splitting the vote, and then Democrats have actually messaged this very well and made it a referendum on McConnell and the Republican Party. So my prediction now is that it's going to go one way or the other. It's going to be the Democrats win both seats or the Republicans win both seats. It's not going to be a split ticket. And so far, it looks like the Democrats have the momentum going into this. This is a live look at Washington, D.C., where the quote-unquote patriots have gathered to protest the certification of the Electoral College tomorrow by Congress. Tomorrow is gonna be wild. Senate Republicans commit to a coup. Believe me, I don't doubt it. Okay, so going back to the Georgia Senate race, I cannot see the link. I actually have the wrong video here. Can't allow the links on the Twitch. You get bombarded with spam. So, one of the things in the Georgia Senate race that I'm actually proud of Democrats for once in my life, they have messaged this well, is that we have Jon Ossoff actually taking the fight to David Perdue. Now, this was the last time that Perdue would debate Ossoff. I believe it was their second debate. He skipped the third debate, and then they had another debate scheduled for the special election. But this is the reason why David Perdue has been running scared from John Ossoff.
It's that you're attacking the health of the people that you represent.
He would be nothing but a rubber stamp for Chuck Schumer. And the reason I'm talking about the same words is that he does it all the time, and that is he's saying things that will disclose or that will disguise his real radical socialist agenda.
Perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly to the COVID-19 pandemic if you hadn't been fending off multiple federal investigations for insider trading. In the middle of a pandemic that is worsening, a pandemic that Senator Perdue told us...
Also, that Senator Perdue has not been able to campaign in because he is currently quarantined for exposure to COVID.
Senator Perdue is still supporting a lawsuit to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
We've got to hold accountable the people that helped create this pandemic, and that's the country of China. Communist China today is one of our biggest threats. This man worked for him for 2 years, and we've heard it already. He is now not acknowledging that he worked for that company. In the last debate, he said absolutely not. But I'm here to tell you that there is a document, and I have it right here. This is his July filing where he disclosed to the federal
government. You gotta love it. Visual aids have
now there's a responsibility
taken over politics.
He needs to own up to, because sooner or later we need somebody in the United States Senate that will stand up to communist China.
This is so beneath the office of a U.S. Senator. You've continued to demean yourself throughout this campaign with your conduct. First, you were lengthening my nose in attack ads to remind everybody that I'm Jewish.
Oh yeah, not only, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, Perdue lengthened his nose to remind everybody that he was Jewish. Leffler darkened Raphael Warnock's skin in an ad and got caught. But I'm going to talk about that. That's a tactic of Republicans.
Then when that didn't work, you started calling me some kind of Islamic terrorist. And then when that didn't work, you started calling me a Chinese communist. It's ridiculous. And you shouldn't do everything that your handlers in Washington
They're just throwing everything at the wall.
Your soul along the way, Senator.
So that's the reason why Perdue would not debate Ossoff after that. And I've got to give props to Ossoff. Not only did he land jabs against Perdue, he landed jabs on Kelly Leffler. So Fox News rolled up on him, as he says, gave him free airtime in prime time. And he took full advantage of it. 7 million views on Twitter. Plus live on Fox News.
We have a crisis of corruption in American politics. And since we're live on Fox, let me take this opportunity to address directly
he has
the
been.
Fox audience. We have 2 United States senators in Georgia who have blatantly used...
We just watched the clip of him in the debate with Perdue calling him a criminal.
This is beyond partisanship. And the reason to your question that I talk so much about health and jobs and justice for all the people.
Hey, Warnock has won me over, too. All the right-wing attacks on him have forced me to actually look up and find out what they were talking about. The whole thing about him impeding an investigation by the police. Turns out he was stepping in to make sure that a underage kid that they were questioning had legal representation. Made me like him so much more. But here's Ossoff with his knockout blow to Kelly Leffler.
Is that we can unite behind that program. We've lost 9 rural hospitals in Georgia in 10 years. We can reopen them. We can invest in infrastructure to build jobs, revitalize our communities, create opportunity, raise the minimum wage so that people doing an honest week's work can not just survive, but can thrive. And yes, pass landmark civil rights and voting rights legislation to secure equal justice for all. And I humbly and respectfully
somebody's hype man in the background. Yeah.
Right now, And I'd love for you to log on to electjon, electjon.com. That's electjon.
He even plugged his website on Fox.
And one more
That's
quick one, what
slick.
we got, yeah. Any concern that the allegations of wrongdoing against Reverend Warnock could possibly be a drag on the Democratic ticket next week?
None whatsoever. Reverend Warnock addressed this issue a year ago, and here's the bottom line. Kelly Leffler has been campaigning.
He flipped it.
Kelly Leffler has been campaigning with a Klansman. And so she is stooping to these vicious personal attacks to distract from the fact that she's been campaigning with a former member of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, we deserve better than that here in Georgia. And I want to encourage everybody to make a plan to vote on Tuesday. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ossoff, very much. All right.
I love that little laugh. She's been campaigning with a Klansman. Like, it's just so absurd to him, and it is absurd. Now, she responded to that attack. I shouldn't call it an attack because it's a simple fact. She called Ossoff a pathological liar. But I mean, I've seen the picture. We showed it. I showed it 2 weeks ago on the show. Leffler, I fuck her name up all the time. Sorry, Leffler said she didn't know who the former Klansman was when she snapped a photo with him. So not even denying that he's a former Klansman and that he was later removed from her event. And just like her response is like, ooh, he lacks credibility. Every Georgian knows that John Ossoff is a pathological liar, and he's a trust fund socialist. The nerve of her! Who's never had a job other than through the Chinese Communist Party. Wow! Now, if you haven't heard her speak before, you might not find my impression funny. But allow me to sum up all of the debates between Reverend Warnock and Kelly Loeffler with this 30-second clip.
Continue to fight for, to make sure that Georgians know everything is at stake in this election, the future of our country, not just the radical ideas of the left, but the radical candidates who would defund the police, who would stand by and attack our military and then withdraw funds that would support Chuck Schumer's defunding of our military by 25%. And I'm going to continue to make sure that we come back from this virus strong. I'm the only candidate qualified to help rebuild our economy and get past this pandemic.
All right.
That's what I'm going to continue to fight for, to make sure that Georgia...
It might be hyperbole, but she was definitely campaigning and there was a Klansman there. The Republicans would say it that way. I hate to be the like, well, that's just politics. But not only did Leffler fire back at Warnock, she released a new ad. And her new Facebook ad darkens the skin of Reverend Warnock. Ran a paid Facebook ad last week that artificially darkened the skin color of her Democratic opponent, who is black. In fact, the campaign used 2 of the same clips in their original form for another Facebook ad that ran the same day, but spent 10 times as much money boosting the version in which Warnock appeared darker. Wow. But now, as I pointed out, this is a common right-wing tactic, because the people that they appeal to, this isn't going to hurt them with. So they do this in order to get more news coverage for their ads. They get their ads free plays on shows like this that mock right-wingers and shit. They get more bang for their buck out of these ads. You are correct, and that's a whole nother can of worms. Facebook's moderation policies. But I can't believe that these same tactics just continue to work. The Republican playbook, it's so trite. It's so passé. They've done these things so many times. I can't believe the rubes keep falling for it. And do I blame the media though? Do you because this story in Salon is exactly what she wanted to happen, or the campaign wanted to happen. Her handlers wanted to happen. %37 of the votes counted. I'm sorry, I was off earlier. 55% of the vote to Jon Ossoff right now. As we monitor the returns. I hope so. Good Lord, I hope so. All right, this is an ad. Reverend Warnock on the phone. I just said that.
Races have been razor thin, and I actually was looking at the numbers from the November general election today, and the difference between the Republican votes and the Democrat votes was just more than 47,000. Then if you analyze the other votes, of about 3,000 between the left-leaning votes and the right-leaning votes. So what are you hearing internally from your people that makes you believe you can make up that gap?
Listen, I'm doing the same thing that I do every Sunday morning. I'm making my case and for what I believe. And the wonderful thing about a democracy is tonight is all about the people. They get to speak. The people have spoken are the four most powerful words of a democracy. And I trust the verdict and will respect the verdict, which is not something that we're witnessing, unfortunately, in a moment like this.
It does look like
an unfortunate.
A lot of the votes that are coming in are coming from more urban areas, though. Looks like you got a lot of votes coming from the expected Democrat areas, with a lot of the rural area yet to go. It is probably going to be incredibly tight. And one of the things that I looked up last night was when they're allowed to start counting their early voting and mail-in voting. Apparently, they can't actually tabulate it, but they can put all the votes. They actually passed a law between the general election and now to where they can begin the process and have everything laid out. And basically all they have to do is hit the button to tabulate as soon as the polls close. So we should know at some point in time tonight or in the early morning and Wednesday. It could also be incredibly close and we might not know for a couple of days. But more than likely we will know tonight. Turnout has been, I don't think that it is going to outpace the general election, they said. But it is going to be like historic for a special election in Georgia, or a runoff election. It looks like it looks like the Democrats are going to break out into a lead. The numbers between Ossoff and Warnock are incredibly similar. So as I said originally, I thought they were going to split the ticket because that was kind of the indication that we got from the general election. But I think whichever way it goes, it's going to be both Democrats win or both Republicans win, one or the other. Have you been paying attention Producer Dave, to the Cope rally. It looks like they're all clearing out now. Must be getting to be about their bedtime. This is a live shot in Washington, D.C. at the MAGA Stop the Steal rally. It's only 8:20 there. I didn't know the Proud Boys were so lame. Did you check in on any of the coverage today? They've been holding different events throughout the day. Because why waste a good trip to Washington, D.C.? Apparently, ahead of tomorrow's certification, Trump has been, quote unquote, leaning on Pence even harder to flip the election results, despite the fact that he actually lacks the power to do that. Turned up the pressure Tuesday to enlist Vice President Mike Pence in a futile effort to reverse the presidential election and keep them in office for 4 more years. Trump wants Pence, who will oversee the vote count, to simply reject the votes for Biden, a power that he doesn't have under the Constitution. Trump tweeted falsely Monday that the vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. And during a rally Monday in Georgia, he told supporters, "I hope Mike Pence comes through for us." Mother says, I can go to jail for this shit. Meanwhile, Rafflesberger, the Secretary of State
Need a professor and a
for
website.
Georgia, was on Good Morning America yesterday to set the record straight on Trump's claims.
We've been fighting the rumor whack-a-mole, and it was pretty obvious very early on that we've debunked every one of those theories that have been out there, but the President Trump continues to believe them. We debunked the one about, the State Farm Arena. We debunked that with WSB here in Atlanta. Ware County, they reported 26% difference. It was actually 0.26%. So we continue to debunk this. We believe that truth matters, which continue to fight to get our message out, but it's fighting the rumor whack-a-mole daily.
Did you feel the pressure when he said
truth matters to rational people, half the country?
We have to follow the process, follow the law. Everything we've done for the last 12 months follows the Constitution of the state of Georgia, follows the United States Constitution, follows state law. We were having to, adapt to a pandemic, and that did pose challenges. One team, the Democrat Party, really jumped on the absentee ballot program. We didn't have to change any state laws for them to do that, but they just grasped onto an existing state law was no excuse absentee voting, which is actually supported by our current.
Didn't even change any laws, despite the fact of what I've heard all over the comment section
but no
on Facebook.
We stood up an online portal with photo ID for people to get their absentee ballots. We did signature match.
The New York Times reports that there were 18 other calls since the election from the White House switchboard.
18 fucking calls!
Yesterday? If not, what were those calls about?
No, I never believed it was appropriate to speak to the president, but he pushed out.
I don't understand that right-wingers herald this guy as some sort of strong man. He is just a desperate crybaby. They all project like they're some tough guys. They're not. And they whine and complain more than anybody else. And they'll tell you about the crybaby liberals all day long. I'm flabbergasted by all this.
I guess he had his staff push us, and they wanted to call. The challenge that we have, first of all, we're in a litigation mode with...
Like a scorned ex-lover just calling over and over and over again.
Whenever you say anything, then you do have to have your advisors there. They have to have their advisors there with lawyers. And so I just preferred not to talk to someone when we're in litigation. We let the lawyers handle it. But we took the call, and we had a conversation. He did most of the talking. We did most of the listening. But I did want to make my points that the data that he has is just plain wrong. He had hundreds.
He said it multiple times during the phone conversation we listened to last night. That's wrong. Sir, with all due respect, that's wrong. The data that you have is wrong. On to Josh Hawley, who tweeted last night that his family had been targeted by Antifa. But let's show you what he's calling Antifa here. This is the Vigil for Democracy. The description: stop disenfranchising black, brown, and urban voters.
We need a constitution.
I believe this is outside of Senator Hawley's house now.
What do we do? Stand up, fight back. When democracy is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. All right, so we understand that some of Senator Hawley's neighbors may be concerned about what's going on here. We're here to visit Senator Hawley, who's the youngest senator in the Senate. He's a senator from Missouri.
Why are you disturbing our neighborhood and scaring our kids?
You can talk to you. So you can talk to
listen.
No, we've got an angry neighbor.
No. I asked you. Give me a man. Hey! Look what she's got on his plate.
What are you trying to do?
Go give me the mask and stop pushing me.
Go give me the mask right now. Get the mask. He lost the election.
I mean, he was explaining himself. Why'd you interrupt him?
Josh Hawley knows that Senator Donald Trump lost the election. Josh Hawley knows that there's absolutely no way that Donald Trump will be president on January 21st. Down and over the ballot, the votes are counted. He lost by.
So now let's go take a look at what Josh Hawley said happened to him. Tonight, while I was in Missouri, Antifa scumbags came to our place in D.C. and threatened my wife and newborn daughter, who can't travel. They screamed threats, vandalized, and tried to pound open our door. Let me be clear, my family and I will not be intimidated by left-wing violence. So that's what he's calling left-wing violence. Let's see, do they go to the door at any point in time? So they do go up. It says they are leaving a copy of the Constitution at the door.
Sir, we're not going to let people hold our democracy hostage. We're not going to let them infringe on our rights.
Why is Senator Josh Hawley in Missouri and not in Washington, D.C. when Congress was sworn in yesterday? No, day before yesterday. Tomorrow is the vote to certify the Electoral College. Josh Hawley has a job to do. He made it sound like, oh, well, I'm not there. They came to intimidate my wife and my kid. Why would Josh Hawley not be in Washington, D.C.? By the way, Josh Hawley, that's his house. He doesn't have a house in Missouri. That's his sister's house that he's talking about, Missouri. Because Josh Hawley has been committing election fraud, despite the fact that he is going to object to the certification of Joe Biden tomorrow. So that was the interaction, them trying to knock down the door. I don't think there's another interaction with the door. They walked up to the front door and they left a copy of the Constitution. The rest of the time they were in the street. Josh Hawley is a fucking liar. Committing election fraud, doesn't live in Missouri, lives in Virginia at that house right there. While I was in Missouri, Antifa scumbags. Why would you, Senator, be in Missouri? I don't fucking get it. 44% of the vote in. Ossoff still leading by about 10 points. Looks like they have completely cleared out here in DC, where we have the Stop the Steal MAGA rally will be taking place tomorrow opposite the Electoral College certification taking place in Congress. So this is really fun. I'm not exactly sure if the Proud Boys are going to get to make an appearance. I'm sure some Proud Boys will indeed be in DC. This happened in Oregon. The Proud Boys have been whining on Twitter because they say the cops have turned on them. As if the cops are supposed to be on their side. Fucking Twitter's not on my side right now. That's just where tensions are starting to build. This is where the cops really get violent with them. The cops treating the Proud Boys the way they would anybody else. Despite their wanting preferential treatment. The leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique, I always fuck his last name up. I'm bad with names. I'm sorry. My apologies to Kelly Leffler for fucking her name up so many times on this show. Hopefully after tonight, Kelly Leffler, I never have to say your fucking name ever again. That would be a pleasure. The returns look almost identical. 54% for the Democrat, 45% for the Republican. 44% of the precinct reporting. Enrique Tario, is that how you say his name? I'm not exactly sure. You would think I'd know this fucker's name by now. Confessed to his crime on Parler. Tario. Enrique Tario. Arrested in Washington, D.C. for his actions at a protest last month. Let's see if we can click on his... it won't pop out. I can get a little closer here. The FBI is currently invested. This is Enrique on Parler. The FBI is currently investigating. Holy shit. So he's stupid too. Oh, well, what would I expect from a Proud Boy? The FBI is currently investigating a supposed hate crime perpetrated by the Proud Boys. They've even offering a reward. Oh, fuck, was he drunk when he wrote this? I'm here to tell you that there was no hate crime committed. The only hate there is in my heart is for communism and an authoritarian government. BLM is a Marxist movement. It isn't about the color of someone's skin. Against the wishes of my attorney, I am here today to admit that I am the person responsible for the burning of this sign, and I am not ashamed of what I did because I didn't do it out of hate. I did it out of love. Love for a country that has given my family so much. The burning of this banner wasn't about race, religion, or political ideology. It was about a racist movement that has terrorized the citizens of this country. This dude, the Proud Boys, are a racist movement that have terrorized this country. Back to what Enrique said, I will not stand by and watch them burn another city. So let me make this simple. I did it. Come get me if you feel like what I did was wrong. We'll let the public decide. Forever proud. Well, they got him. Tario is most likely in D.C. for the upcoming election protest on January the 6th. He is expected to appear in court this week, but won't have much of a defense. On Parler last month, he admitted that he had taken the banner. Charged with misdemeanor destruction of property, as well as felony weapons possession. Apparently they found a bunch of high-capacity magazines in his vehicle, which is illegal in Washington, D.C. So it's nice to see people be held accountable for their crimes. We don't get that very often. Speaking of being held accountable for crimes, Iran issues Interpol arrest request for President Trump. Now, obviously, nothing is going to come of this. But I say hand him over. Fuck. Let him be somebody else's problem for a little while. Shit. Iran has issued a red notice request to international police organization Interpol, seeking the arrest of U.S. President Donald Trump and 47 other American officials. See, that's where they've gone too far. If it was just Trump they were asking for, I think most of America would agree we should hand him over. But the American military establishment is going to want to protect the other 47 people they're asking for. And 47 other American officials for their role, it says they played in the assassination of top general Qasem Soleimani in the early 2020. About a year to the day, wasn't it? January 3rd? A move that coincides with the anniversary of Soleimani's death. Maybe it was the 5th. For some reason, I was thinking it was the 3rd. We hit like the 3rd because there were a bunch of memes about how we hit the 3rd day of January. And we were going to go into World War III. So, at least some sort of indictment for Trump. No indictment for the asshole cop who killed Jacob Blake. The decision not to charge any of the officers involved in the August shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha drew many similar reactions. But others praised the decision and pleaded for calm in its aftermath. Governor Tony Evers called Tuesday's decision further evidence that our work is not done. Jim Palmer, the executive director of the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, so head pig, applauded the decision in a tweet and said the case should stand as an example of a cautionary tale of the dangers of rendering judgment without the benefit of definitive facts. And once again, I mean, as we've seen in the Breonna Taylor case, they're going to do their best to hide behind grand jurors every fucking chance they get. I want to show you the cop. I've got the picture of him right here. This is the cop, and his name is Rustin Shesky. Rustin Shesky. This is the man who shot Jacob Blake in the back. Rustin Shesky. It just looks like a fucking punchable face. Rustin Shesky. Just wanted to make sure that name and face were out there. He said those facts, that Blake was armed with a knife and Shesky felt threatened, run counter to a wholly inaccurate and false narrative in the aftermath of the shooting. Well, actually, so there's this just all reactions from different people. I had a live stream of it, of the protests up. But the two outlets that had it stopped broadcasting, so I don't I know that protests are happening in Wisconsin. Doesn't look like we have a live stream at this moment. Streamed an hour. Everybody was streaming an hour ago. My incredibly blank Twitter. This is the scene in Kenosha. Looks like the National Guard arrived, is what they said. Actually seems kind of small. Here, this might be a little bit later. Marching through the streets. "7 hours ago, a large National Guard presence gearing up in the back of the Kenosha courthouse." Oh yeah, I forgot about the Rittenhouse arraignment. Turns out they weren't even, they weren't there for the Rittenhouse arraignment. They were there over the Jacob Blake grand jury decision. District Attorney says it is incontrovertible that Jacob Blake was armed with a knife. So, I don't understand. He says that Jacob Blake also admitted to law enforcement that he was armed with a knife. So, I don't get it. I don't get why that means the man needed to die. This country trips me out. Today, on Capitol Hill, Goldman Sachs set up 10,000 help wanted signs. I know what you're thinking. Why? What? Goldman Sachs? What? So apparently their thought process on this was that they're raising awareness for small businesses or some shit. Sachs put them up. Oh shit, hold on. Sachs put them up to represent the small businesses it has supported over the last decade and to bring attention to the need for more government assistance for small business. Now, if I had to guess, if Goldman Sachs is wanting more assistance to small business, it has to do with, one, they expect that the assistance that small business is going to get is going to funnel up to them anyway. Two, that they'll be able to attach some pork to the bill and get themselves a chunk of money too. That was one of the things I said repeatedly going up into the end of Congress last year, was the fact that I'm amazed that places like Goldman Sachs weren't putting more pressure on lawmakers to pass some sort of stimulus, relief bills, survival checks, whatever you want to call them. Fuck banks. That's exactly right. I pissed on a Wells Fargo once, just maybe twice. I don't remember how many times it was. I think it was twice. I was going to put together a documentary called See Me Pee, where I went around and pissed on different banks. It's gonna hit Wells Fargo, gonna do Bank of America. I actually we had a documentary filmmaker come to our college, and I'm there at the talk, and she asked if anybody has any ideas for a documentary film, and like, ooh, I've raised my hand. I'm like, ooh, it's called See Me Pee. It's about me pissing on different banks and blah, 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 and I explained how they played a role in the financial crisis and yada, yada, and they deserve to be pissed on. And like, she was horrified. Hate is a hell of a motivator. If it's possible, part 2, see you poo. If it's possible, I will live to piss on your grave, Jason Creed. In Knoxville, Cotton Eye Joe's, the bar, is speaking out.
Right now, who?
After they have had photos and videos circulate on the internet of their packed, I guess it's a packed bar. That's what I'm expecting to see when we watch this video here. Yeah, that's it. That's a pretty packed bar.
Two large events over the weekend that county's COVID-19 regulations.
You may have seen this video that viewers have sent to us. WATE 6 on your.
I actually had not seen that video.
Of the West Knox County Bar, who says he's doing what he has to do to save his business.
I'll piss wherever they throw your ashes.
It was business as usual this weekend at the Cotton Eye Joe. They move forward with their New Year's Eve party.
It's still not as lit as Donald Jr.
County
dancing to Vanilla Ice.
Bars were being discriminated against. People choose to come to bars. We don't make them come to bars. I realize we're not a necessity, but these people make their own choices.
Images like
it's a necessity for your fucking employees who need to make a living. And if you're not closed, if you're not following health orders, then they're not going to be able to collect any kind of unemployment. Apparently nobody does give a fuck about COVID. I want to know how you're going to make a living when you're in a hospital. And I'm sure they're not, and that's the thing that pisses me off more than anything. Is I'm sure the employees of Cotton Eye Joe's in fucking Knoxville, Tennessee don't have health insurance. So if you're going to put your employees at risk, I would hope when one of your employees eventually gets it, several of your employees eventually get it, I hope you're going to cover their medical bills. I hope you're going to cover their wages when one of them has to go to the hospital. Is that what they do at Cotton Eye Joe's? I don't even know. I used to DJ for 3 days at an Electric Cowboy. I assume it's the same kind of chain bar. Electric Cowboy was some fun times. They had a certain way that you had to do the playlist so that every like 3 or 4 songs you made everybody get off the dance floor so that they'll go and buy shit from the bar. I just didn't pay any attention to their rules and DJ'd like I would any other place. They fired me. Let's hear more from the owner of Cotton Eye Joe's.
Showing the large crowds and lack of social distancing, the owner, Chuck Ward, says the events weren't an act of defiance, but instead a business owner just trying to stay afloat.
We had to shut down March 15th, 2020 for 10 weeks, and that's devastating. I mean, that was a $900,000 loss in revenue that the Cotton Eye Joe had to sustain, and you don't get over those types of things.
Dude, and I am for the government stepping in and making you whole. I am for the government protecting you from your creditors. I need you to join with me so we can put pressure on them to do that. So that we can all do the right thing and stay home and jack off to OnlyFans and watch Netflix for a few months.
And it never will.
Ward says he even handed out masks and hand sanitizer at the door, but feels like bar owners are being unfairly singled out.
Don't discriminate against the bars because people choose to go to bars. People choose to go to Walmart, Costco, Sam's Club, the malls. The malls were packed over the Christmas holidays.
Even with all the attention, Ward says...
it's the same thing for all these dumb fuck right-wingers.
To stay in business and survive. I mean, like,
another one's going to bring up Costco here in the next video we watch.
That work here on any given night, and they've got families to feed, they've got house payments to make, they've got car payments to make. You know, we have to continue to strive and stay open.
In Knoxville, Jordan Brown, WATE 6 on your side.
So, checking back in Georgia, it is tightening up. 53% of precincts. 52% Ossoff. 47% Purdue. Same thing. 52% Warnock. 47% Leffler. Exactly. And people can say stay distanced at a Costco. We did that. We looked at the Yale study. And like I hate to take the side of big box retail stores, the bane of my existence, something I've railed against for years. But I understand why they are open during the pandemic. They're big enough to keep distanced. You can go to one of these big box retail stores and get everything you need in one trip. Cut down on having to go to multiple different places. I think we should nationalize Walmart. I mean, it's already kept afloat by our food stamps. One, by the people that are going, I would assume a vast majority of the food stamps in this country, something like 60% probably, I don't know, I'm just pulling that out of my ass, are spent at Walmart to begin with. I would almost guarantee that it's over half of all government assistance programs like SNAP, WIC, are spent at Walmart. Their employees, it's an astronomical number of their employees that are on government assistance as well. So go ahead, nationalize fucking Walmart. Make it a cheap distribution center. I prefer worker co-ops myself. Make everybody in America a stockholder of Walmart. So this was titled "Business Owner Explodes." I forgot what it was even about. So it's going to be a surprise to all of us.
But I cannot. I have to be closed.
Why aren't you guys at Costco right now? There's 500 people inside.
See, there he goes. Like, why don't you go to Costco right now?
Details. I have it all recorded. Anybody
There are 100 people inside Walmart. What are you doing? Just get out.
It's the same thing the other guy was saying.
Nobody wants you here. Get out.
Look at this. Look at all these people.
This is the only people left on Main Street.
I want to know how many of these people are like making excuses for when somebody like Jacob Blake gets shot in the back. Like, oh, they should have just followed the law.
You're not trying to do anything. You guys are not helping.
He's trying to explain what the steps are. And you know what? We've lost a lot of time because you're not willing to listen.
Dude, they're just doing their jobs.
So, if you want to, you have the right to request the hearing with the hearing officer.
For what? Why do I want to request a hearing?
To show cause why the permit suspension on Friday was not warranted.
For what? I want to go about my business, man.
What you're doing now is
I am
you're
following
arguing.
the rules, and I want to go about my business. Why do I have to go to a hearing? Why do I have to do all this stuff?
Because you're
I'm trying to keep my business afloat, and now you're giving me more work on top of that.
Right, so you're arguing to the wrong people. I'm not the person to argue to. Okay, I hear your arguments. I think that there might be something there. Okay, however, you need.
He's being very diplomatic to him.
So you can have a hearing to give all of your arguments. Don't waste all of your arguments here on me.
It's not an argument.
Don't waste all your arguments here on me.
Follow the rules.
Save it for the judge, buddy.
Okay, but I have to warn you because failure to request the hearing within 15 days from the date of that notice on Friday is deemed a waiver of the right to request a hearing. Okay, so we definitely want to do that. If we have things to say, that's the place to take it. Okay. However, at the moment, the permit remains suspended.
So what you're going to say is you're going to give me a citation every single day that I'm open and I'm supposed to be closed.
Yeah, that's how it works. This was posted by a right-winger. Business owner explodes on bureaucrats trying to shut him down. Why aren't you at Costco right now? Watch every second, it says. I don't think he comes across looking good. Old Cliff Maloney, one of my favorites. From Young Americans for Liberty. One of the interesting things that's come up through this whole COVID ordeal, though, is that companies are seeing a benefit to a 4-day work week, which is something I've advocated for a very long time. One of the things, I'm not so keen so much on raising the minimum wage. I think we should shorten the work week. I personally think we should have 24-hour work weeks. And there's a lot of data to suggest that people get way more work done that way. And that a good portion of your work day is actually spent jacking off doing nothing. Not literally jacking off, figuratively jacking off. Boo-jacking around, if you will. I think that might be an Eastern Kentucky word. Somebody said that at a job I was working on at one point in time when I was 20. Somebody said boo-jacking around. It cracked me up, and I've said it ever since. When Target Publishing cut staff pay after the first coronavirus lockdown last year, the magazine group knew it had to make a positive gesture to its employees, so it introduced a 4-day work week. See, I think it should be mandatory by the government. Because anything, it's supply and demand. If you make labor more scarce, it drives up the cost of labor. So shortening the work week, shortening the work day, shortening the hours you're allowed to work somebody in a week without paying them overtime. We should talk about, increasing overtime. Time and a half is kind of a joke if we're being honest with ourselves. anything that makes labor more scarce is going to drive up the cost of it. And it's also going to force companies to, one, either hire more people, or two, pay people a better wage. I think it's a win-win. It's a win-win-win. But that's just me and my crazy ideas. The United Kingdom. Oh, wait a minute. Is it still united? The UK is still a thing. It's just not part of the EU anymore. Maybe it's even more united now. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said trips outside will be allowed only for essential shopping, exercise, COVID-19 testing, medical help, and escaping domestic abuse. On Monday, announced new national lockdown in England, including the most stringent level of restrictions since the start of the pandemic, to slow down the spiral of new cases of COVID-19 on the same day the UK started the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine. By the way, stick around to the end of the show. We have a story about a woman coming back to life after dying from COVID. I haven't read it yet. That should be fun. The measures are similar to the lockdown imposed last March and include asking the public to stay at home and leave for only limited reasons. We've got to see some kind of restrictions here in this country. 2 weeks until we have a new administration, hopefully we have some sort of approach. And that they give a financial lifeline to people so that the local governments, because it's been putting mayors, governors in just a horrendous position where they need to do what's right for public health, but they know that they can't cut off people's livelihoods. If the federal government isn't going to provide the help to allow people to stay home, then it is somewhat immoral for a governor or a mayor to impose some sort of restriction on earning a living. I understand the dilemma. I'm sorry we had a shitty federal government. Don't blame me. I voted for the other people. God damn. Oh, I said stick around to the end of the show, but it's like the next story on my list. Former Miss Virginia comes back to life after being declared dead from COVID-19. Being crowned a Christmas miracle after a near-death experience.
After a near-death experience with COVID-19.
I just said that.
13's Taylor Coleman joins us live in the newsroom with her incredible story.
Dana, Barbara Guthrie Lay's family say she was pronounced dead on December 22nd, but minutes later, she came back to life. The 82-year-old former Miss Martinsville and Miss Virginia currently lives in Roswell, Georgia with her husband of 6 years, Tony Lay. Lay tells me that they believe...
Oh, that's what you were talking about back in black. The karaoke.
She was having difficulty breathing, so he took her to the hospital, and 2 days later, he received the call that she had passed away. He says he made his tearful phone calls to family and friends, but then he received the call that she had a pulse.
have always loved my wife.
Oh.
How much until this happened, and that I can't live without her.
Lay says they're still unsure how all of this happened. Barbara has since been moved from the ICU to a regular room. At this time, she does not know the doctors briefly pronounced her dead. They're still deciding when and how to tell her.
Oh, wow.
Barbara is a fighter, and she says she wants to live to 101 so that they can celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. Back to you.
Wow. They haven't even told her yet that she was dead. 61% of the votes in Georgia. It is definitely tightening 50.3% John Ossoff, 49.7% David Perdue. Very similar numbers on the other side. I actually predicted that Warnock would be the better candidate, but it appears that wait a minute. Warnock has more votes. Ossoff has more of a percentage of votes. I mean, these are very slim margins. That's interesting to note. There might have been more write-ins in the Ossoff-Perdue race than there were in the Warnock-Leffler race. So, still keeping an eye on Georgia. This is an interesting story to me. Let's find out about the guy who chopped up his landlord and fed him to badgers. 30-year-old Daniel Walsh has been jailed for life for the killing of a 71-year-old. He took a taxi to a nearby DIY store where he bought the implements he needed to dismember and bury Mr. Graham Snell. Now, this happened in the UK. This is in Wales. Walsh, who turns 31 this week, refused to appear in person for his sentencing or from a video link. And he has always refused to reveal how he killed the man. It'll be 27 years before he is eligible for parole. His cause of death remains unascertained. And that is because only you, Walsh, knows who killed him. That is according to a judge. You gruesomely cut him to pieces and caught a taxi to a badger set. I don't know what a badger set is. Where you dug a number of holes and buried his body, no doubt hoping he would be eaten by badgers. Oh, actual badgers. Following a near 3-week trial at Derby Crown Court in November, a jury took just an hour to find Walsh guilty of murder. This is not well written. The trial was told how he admitted to dismembering the pensioner, but denied being the man who killed him at their home in Chesterfield in June of 2019. He then buried the body parts, some of which remained undetected for months, down a badger set in woodland in the town. Scheduled to be sentenced on December 14th, but sensationally sacked his legal team that morning, and the hearing was adjourned until today. Fed him to badgers. I mean, as the leftist that I am, I'm not opposed to feeding some landlords to badgers. 63% of the vote in, and it is getting closer and closer. That was my fear, that they had counted the more populated areas. So the estimate, when I was looking it up, was that we will probably know who won the Senate race around midnight or 1 o'clock Eastern time. this evening. So I'm not going to stick around that long because tomorrow we may go all day. The Cope Rally from Washington, D.C. The certification of the election results on the floor of Congress. Tomorrow is going to be wild. I'm going to be streaming about midday. Probably around 12 o'clock Eastern Time. As we prepare for the chaos. And it could be a lot of fun. Because there are a lot of right-wingers that are not dealing well with losing the election at all. And there are several that are positive something is going to happen tomorrow to be able to change the outcome of the election. And that Joe Biden won't be seated 2 weeks from tomorrow. That's right, we had the inauguration 2 weeks from tomorrow. So as I said, I'll be live about noon Eastern Time. I'm going to send, if you're on Twitch right now, I'm going to send you over to SJW9000. Everybody else, go ahead, light one up, tip one back. It's alright to have a little fun before you hit the sack. I'm Justin FREAKIN. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon on the Troll Patrol. Live.